She already should go. That's fine. All right.
Well, it's 7 p.m. I welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And it's one of the few town meetings we can say, for right now, there's no foul weather out there. God knows we've had many. But anyway, with that, I'd like to bring the meeting to order. And I'll go over a few things as we get into it. Before I actually start with the articles, the first thing I would like to do is recognize Reverend Gail Doctor, and she'll say a short blessing of the meeting. And then if we could do follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and as tradition for many years before me and hopefully after me, we'll go first, God Bless America, and then I'll get into a few little housekeeping things and we'll get started. With that.
Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming out tonight. So please, if you would just plant your feet on the floor, take a nice deep breath, and arrive in this space where you're doing all this important work. This is non-theistic because we separate church and state, so please receive this as simply gratitude for being gathered here today. We ask that those who are gathered here tonight will find common ground. Take a deep breath and listen to each other and honor the dignity and the importance of each person who chooses to speak. Hear each other's voices, be creative, be curious, and simply appreciate that you are the ones who have chosen to show up to take care of this community together, and you care about this community, which is the one that you have chosen to sustain together. May there be a blessing on the work that you undertake this evening on behalf of all the people who live in this village and in this valley, and may you make choices that are sustainable for all the people who also are part of this community. Blessings.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to, at this time, if you all rise, and we will do the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as I said, tradition, when you want to set us here, we can keep that going. I've got voices there. America, stand beside her and guide her through the light of love, from mountains to the valleys, to the oceans, wonderful. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you. For those of you that are in the back, there's a whole row right up to the front here. Don't be scared. Again, I'd like to welcome everybody for coming tonight. I'd like to ask that we have a very orderly and courteous meeting. I apologize, I'm suffering a little bit of laryngitis here with my throat, so if I drink a lot of water and have some, mints or whatever to help keep the moisture going, I apologize. And I'll try to be loud. Usually I do not have a problem with that. Chief Pearl will attest that I can be heard. So, anyway, you one person at a time will talk, and you direct all your questions, comments, or other to the moderator. I do not want you going back and forth unless it's something I ask someone. Yes, go ahead and answer that for information, but it's basically come to me, you get recognized, and ask that you act accordingly. And discussion has to be kept to the subject matter at hand that we are dealing with. So if we're dealing with a transfer station article issue, somebody starts in on something that's totally 180 degrees, I'm not going to allow that. You discuss what we're talking about at the time. It's pretty simple, but it's just one little thing that I like to remind people. The other thing that we've done, the supervisor suggested, probably majority of the time, voice vote will decide the question yes or no. If it doesn't, if I ask for a show of hands, everybody signed in through the checklist and you've been presented a little pink card. So when you get ready to call for a vote, for a hand vote, I ask those of you that have a card and want to say yes, lift the card. If you want to say no, okay? Everybody good? Thank you. We have a microphone down here. For those of you that have the same problem I have and have to have a second set of ears, and they're not working good, and you can't hear people, please let me know. We have a mic here for anyone that, as long as you're okay coming up, or bring the mic to you, whatever. We have a mic up here. If myself and or the board or anyone on this end needs to speak and have everybody here, there's a mic live here. All right? I will remind you, the last article, Article 15 in this case, is only a discussion article. We cannot appropriate money or spend money that's already appropriated. We cannot do anything that has a dollar associated with it. Strictly discussion. Okay? I think the last little thing I want to make sure of, when I do Article 4, which is the operating budget of the town, I'm going to read that article, and then on page 26 is the breakdown start of that. I'm just going to basically say, Selectmen, is there any discussion? And I'm going to move to town clerk. I'm not going to read it as written. I'm just going to ask if there's a discussion on the line item, and I would ask that you keep the discussion pertinent to that line item. And hopefully it will go very smooth. It's a mask optional night. That's the state's stand, that's the school board stand that administers the building here, and that's my stand tonight. So if there's anyone that has a real problem, please talk to me and we'll make arrangements to keep you happy. We'll try to honor everybody's personal feelings there. Unless there's a question or any confusion on anything I did, I would like to get right into the part of the meeting. Is there any comment or question before I get started? Great. Okay. The article, I'm sorry, I didn't get the list out. The first thing I want to do is give you the results of your election on Tuesday. If you bear with me just a second. I said, Karen, usually she gives me gives me a copy of that. I know, but I want to do it correct. You got it? Oh, you're ahead of me, Barbara. I'm not very technical. Okay. The Article 1 was election of officers. Keep it right. I will go to town list first. I got it on. Oh, thanks, Karen. There we go. She comes through, always comes through. Okay. For the town offices, trustees of trust fund, Chris McAleer received 138 votes, and I declare him elected. Town moderator, Jerry Doherty III, received 127 votes, and I declare him elected. Supervisors of the checklist, Michelle Phillips, 144 votes, I declare her elected. Trustees of cemeteries was a write-in, and Alicia Hawks received the most votes at 39, and I would declare her elected. Selectman, Barbara Campbell received 139 votes, and I would declare her elected. Library trustees, Laurel Smith received 143 votes, and I declare her elected. Library trustees was Fred Tompkins, 143 votes, I declare him elected. On the school side, the school board, Jerry Doherty IV received 126 votes, I declare him elected. School clerk was a write-in, and Gino Funicello received the majority votes of 22, I would declare him elected. School treasurer, a write-in vote, Noah Weeda received 2 votes, and I would declare him elected. School moderator, write-in, and Sasha Tracy received the most votes of 13, I would declare her elected. I will put a condition on that. My job is to declare them winning the election. The write-in candidates that got the most votes, by statute, the most votes can be 2 or more, or even 1 or more, but they have to, I'm declaring their candidacy providing they accept the nomination, or the appointment, election. The people that have been newly elected that were on the warrant, or on the ballot, or re-elected, I ask them and everyone that takes an office, before you can discharge your duties going forward after the close of this meeting tonight, you have to be sworn in. Please do that. As Karen will attest, there's been years we've had to kind of chase. And it's so new candidate, new elections, re-elections, get sworn in. Thank you. And we have nominating papers that we make out for all of those. Karen?
All write-in candidates have officially accepted prior to the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So all of these names I've declared, they've all accepted their positions, and I'm assuming those that had their names on the ballots will also be accepting that. Okay, moving right along, the results of Article 2, zoning amendment. The yes is 135, the no is 18. I declare that voted passed. Article 3, amendment to zoning ordinance. The yeses had 142s, the noes had 10. Move that article passed. Okay, Article 4, the operating budget. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the selectmen's recommended operating budget of the town in the amount of $2,473,512, not including appropriations by special warrant, is recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 and 0. And with that, I need a motion and a second. And I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
And I would like, when you do that for recording, Karen needs to know a name. This was Jerry the fourth, and somebody who had a second over here. So thank you. All right. Is there any discussion? And before I actually respond to anyone, I just want to say, and I've said this before, we've had many discussions on the first thing. The operating budget of the town, regardless what we do on any of the line items on the 3 pages that we're going to quickly go over, hopefully, and everything will be smooth, whether it's up or whether it's down, amended or non-amended, we vote on the bottom line at the end of that. And that's the locked-in number that the selectmen are allowed to spend up to. They cannot spend more than the bottom line. However, by statute and by the state constitution, they're allowed to move monies we discussed tonight from line item to line item to line item as they see the need to keep the town operating and to keep everything flowing. So if you make a motion We will accept the motion. If it's passed, we'll amend the bottom line when we get to it. If it's defeated, we'll move to the next line item. It really is an advisory amendment to the selectmen. They can follow it and make it do what they need to do and adjust the lines accordingly, or they can disregard and do whatever. But we've done this before. I just want to make sure. Is there anybody having a question about that? It's been very well discussed in many town meetings. So it's a state statute. It's not my law. So, all right. With that, is there any discussion? Sarah?
Yes.
Name, Sarah?
My name is Sarah Clemens. Should I go up front?
Sarah?
Sarah, could you come
You
use
got a
the mic?
request. Can you use the mic? Are you comfortable using the microphone?
I'll start with my voice and we'll see if they...
Actually, you need it because of the streaming. It was very hard to hear the school
Oh, I
meeting.
didn't
so we
realize
had
that. I
to
didn't
comment.
announce that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
Is it on?
Push the button up, make sure.
Yep. There you go.
Red light?
Is it on?
No.
Push it.
How about now?
Red light on?
You have to hold that pretty close there.
Yeah, hold it very close to your.
Hold it right up to you. Hold it down.
There's no red light.
It flashes once when you turn it on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to make a motion at this time for an amendment to the proposed total operating budget of $2,473,000, excuse me, $2,473,512. The amount to be reduced by $72,530, and direct the selectmen to target the reduction amount to reduce wage increases to all town employees as proposed in the 2022 wage budget. And I'd like to explain the reasons for this. Again, my name is Sarah Clemens, and I have been a resident of Jackson for 58 years. First, I believe our employees should be fairly compensated. In or around 2015, the town voted for wage adjustments for our employees. Since that time, we have given our employees 3% increase every year. In these times of economic insecurity, I feel giving 15, 16, or 17% increases in wages is unreasonable and unfair to the taxpayer of Jackson. In addition to the proposed wage increase, we pay 95% of the health insurance of our employees. For an example, a cost for a family plan to the town is $24,750. Also, the town pays 14.06% of an employee's wage to New Hampshire Retirement. I did ask for this information from the town administrator. Starting in January, I inquired about these costs, but was unable to obtain it in time for the budget hearings. It is, in my opinion, it is wrong for government to grow larger as family family budgets get smaller due to inflation and higher heating and gasoline, electricity, food, and other things necessary for daily life. I am asking for you to vote yes for this amendment article. I will now present the amendment article to the selectmen.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, so we have an amendment proposed, and I can read it again so everybody's clear, and we would vote on an amendment, but the actual action of reducing or leaving alone will be done when we get down through to actually vote on what the current bottom line is or adjusted bottom line by any adds or subtracts to the warrant. Understand? Is everybody clear? So it's just making a motion at this time for amendment to the proposed total operating budget that is $2,473,512. The amount to be reduced by $72,530, and direct the selectmen to target the reduction amount to reduce wage increases to all town employees as proposed in the 2022 wage budget, presented by Sarah Clemens, 3/10/22. I have to have a motion and a second before we can even discuss. Is there a motion?
Second, I was going to second.
Wait a minute. You're making the motion?
I was going to second it.
I don't have a motion yet.
Sarah didn't make the motion?
She presented the amendment.
She didn't make the vote.
She didn't make a motion. I want a motion on the amendment. We'll vote on the amendment.
Motion.
Okay, but just for the recording purposes.
Bill Baldwin.
Okay, now I need, okay, the motion has been made and seconded on an amendment. We will be voting only on the amendment, for or against. And if it passes, we will record that, and when we bring up the total, because there could very well be other adds or deletions, when we do. Is everybody clear on that? Is there any discussion?
I'd like to say something.
Okay, and please give your name so that Karen can, rather she knows you're not.
Hi, Emily Miller, or Penny Miller. I wish to also express my respect and appreciation for our town employees. Staff have always been particularly helpful, professional, timely, and friendly. I don't think anybody has any discussion about that. However, I'm confounded by the proposed salary increases. I understand the need to offer more for a position when there are few applicants. However, to jump existing staff salaries up to 17%, averaging 14% is concerning. The long-term increases come at a time of extreme economic uncertainty, inflation, and rising fuel costs, especially for working-class families who juggle multiple jobs. Please understand that this motion does not include other costs associated with the proposed wage increases. These costs include the 14% retirement and 7.65% Social Security. These wage increases will actually cost taxpayers $88,276. We will hear the argument from our that our employees are the most valuable asset we have, and that they work very hard and have taken on additional responsibilities, that these increases will cost the taxpayers pennies on the thousand. Most of us can claim the same things. However, despite consistent exemplary reviews for over 25 years, I've never received a 6% raise, never mind a 17% raise. These increases are extraordinary, especially since salaries were already adjusted back in 2016. I'd also like to share that the town already provides extraordinary benefits as well as competitive salaries. These include 25 paid vacation days and 15 paid holidays for a first-year employee. Vacation time increases to 30 after 4 years and continues up to 33, 35, and 40 days respectively. They include an unheard of 95% employer-paid health insurance with a $1,000 deductible. Alternatively, if an employee does not take the insurance, the town pays them outright. I know of no other company or business that does this. Most people's salaries do not increase if they do not go on a company's insurance plan. As a taxpayer, I'm concerned about the tax burden to myself as well as young families that are trying to live here and keep our community vibrant and our school alive. We continue to hear that the rate has not gone up significantly, but I know for a fact that my sister's tax bill has doubled in 10 years. There's much talk about workforce housing, but continued increases in taxes force people to do short-term rentals to help relieve their tax burden. Please consider the economic instability.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, because I have to watch time. I'm not trying to be rude,
That's
but
all
I'll
right.
give people equal time, but
Well, I
I
hope
need to
if this passes, the selectmen honor the intent.
discussions somewhat. Okay, is there any other discussion in the back?
I don't believe the microphones.
Please state your name.
Tish Hanlon. I don't believe the microphones are working. There's a number of people who are saying they're not hearing what's being said.
Well, thank you for that. Can you hear me any better?
They're not on.
Can you hear me any better now? Can you hear me any better? No. Can you hear me now? I apologize. We had a technical difficulty situation and very important. We'll just fix it. So I will ask all people to remember that you've got to carry your voices all the way to the back of the room. So please be loud. Try to be as clear as possible. Thank you. Do you want to, I kind of cut you there, my comment about loudness. Do you want to repeat what you had to say so that everybody hears it? Or are you, everybody clear with what comments you made?
Yes.
Okay. I'm giving you that opportunity this time. All right. Other comments? Questions?
I rise against this.
Jerry.
Jerry Dougherty. I rise against this motion to reduce the budget. It's hard to get people to work these days. The town advertised for a road agent and did not get one single application. If we lost an employee because of not properly paying them, they do a great job, all of our departments. And I think that to reduce, the selectmen have made a decision as to what would be a fair wage for them and benefits. And I think that to honor them with what the selectmen suggested is what I suggest. Thank you.
Any other discussions, comments, questions? Yes, sir. I know most everybody knows you, but please state your name for the record.
Larry Garland. I just have a question on how the amounts of the increase were determined for the different positions. Were they based on some form of salary surveys or external data?
Yeah,
The
Larry,
selectman would answer that one for you. The record.
do you want me to?
Thanks, Larry, for that.
Is this better? Thanks, Jerry. Thank you for that question, Larry, because I think it's an important one. We did meet with the department heads and went over job comparative salaries from New Hampshire Municipal, which is kind of a take it or leave it website for our purposes, because Jackson is a different town than any other town in New Hampshire. So we looked at towns that are our size, that have our same or similar assessed value of property, and compared in those ways, but statistically it was a little difficult to come up with a town that's just like Jackson. So we started there and used that as one piece of our calculation. And then we looked at the staff that we have on our roster and the positions, and we talked to each staff person and requested job descriptions and information about their staff that they manage as well. So when you take the town office with Julie Atwell, Julie Hoyt, the town tax clerk and the deputy clerk and the tax collector, and there are 2 people in it. So we have a small amount of staff to evaluate. We looked at the amounts that they were paid, the amounts that they have requested over the years, and the amounts that they requested this year. And I can tell you, we didn't pay everyone what they requested, even though it sounds like we put a high number on some of the salaries from what the folks are saying. But we did evaluate each position based on its position on its own, not a flat 3% raise across the board as we've done in the past to meet inflation. And when you look at some of the salaries, they are higher than a 6 or 7% inflation rate now, and some of them are lower than that. So it was based on the position as it stands. The other thing is that Sarah mentioned that the cost of living is going up for everyone that's sitting in this room. Well, it's also going up for the town of Jackson, because we have heating oil costs for our buildings, and we have costs to run our facilities that we have in the town too. So yes, our budget is increasing as well for the same reasons that household budgets are increasing. So to keep our budget flat and to not give our employees raises, which I believe that $72,530 amount is the total amount of increases to our employees. So I believe what Sarah and Penny were requesting is that we don't give our employees any raises at all. So I don't really think that's a fair assessment to do for our employees. I don't think we based any of these raises on anyone being a flight risk, because I don't think that's how you should pay employees. If we leave someone and they want to go to a better or different position, it should be because they want to go to that position and they're not happy with their job. I base employees' raises on the fact that they're being paid fairly for the job they're doing, the responsibilities they're given, the respect that they generate for serving the community. And if I ask anyone on our staff, and I'll keep it short now, I'll ask anyone on our staff to do anything 24/7, and they are responsive and respected. So I feel very proud to be able to value our employees the way we do, and to have been able to sit with all of them and come up with these new amounts. Thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Does that answer your question? pretty much? Okay.
Well, I was interested if there was an external professional survey, a salary survey that you did.
Just from New Hampshire Municipal, we started as part of the calculation.
Any other? Peter, go ahead, state your name for.
Peter Benson, Jackson. I'm the deputy fire chief in town, and it seems like this motion, while well-intentioned, is a pretty broad brush. I'm here standing up for my fellow firefighters. When you see the firefighters piece, that's $3,000 for 20 some odd people. We don't make a whole lot of money on the fire department, and you know, we pay for our own fuel to get to calls. As Barbara mentioned, inflation hits us as well. I think that this is just, it would be sad for us to go back to the next fire meeting and say to the people who volunteer and serve this town that the town didn't allot for raises, which is, I think, going to amount to about 75 cents per hour for our volunteers. So while I get the intention of this, it's kind of just a broad brush and throwing a dart at a number. Thank you.
All right, sorry. Speaker.
Good evening, everyone. I want to speak about the question about how the numbers were arrived at least from my perspective as a department head, to recommend to the selectmen for a market adjustment for the police officers. Now, I will tell you that very rarely am I uncomfortable speaking about anything in public. No. But compensation is probably the most uncomfortable subject, because it feels like equal parts of bragging and begging, and neither one of those things I'm very comfortable with. But I can tell you that the market adjustment that I asked for the police department is 98% for the patrol officer's position, not for the staff sergeant and myself, and that's to include the part-time officer. Now, the wage study that I did was Carroll County. I didn't do a national study or a statewide study, because I think when it comes to wages and compensation, regional market forces are more relevant and more critical than a broader market force. Somebody's probably not going to move from here to Nashua, maybe not, but they certainly can work and move within the confines of Carroll County. So I did a study in August of 21, August 22. As of August 22, 2021, the town of Jackson had the lowest starting wage in all of Carroll County. Our starting wage was $20.43. That is completely untenable in this day and age. There's been a lot of cultural, social forces affecting law enforcement. There is not a police department in Carroll County, to include the state police, that doesn't have immediate openings. State police has over 50 openings. The state police barracks in Troop E, which we used to rely on very heavily for off-hours calls, is now so short they're off the road at 11:30 at night. I have never in 36 years seen a time when a municipal police department covered more road hours and shift hours than the state police. We actually cover more hours than they do. They ask for our help. And so that's a paradigm shift, and it had to be addressed. When I asked for compensation change for the staff, I was thinking about a couple of things. First and foremost is, I don't like the idea of just raising the base so you can attract new talent. It causes conflict. It causes division with the officers that have been here. Veteran officers have been here for time, because then an entry-level person's pay is the same as theirs. And that causes some hard feelings and can cause flight. I am concerned about flight. I'm concerned about the 3 R's when it comes to pay: recruitment, retention, and reward. It is extremely difficult to recruit an officer, particularly when you have the wage scale we have. It's hard to retain them. We've done a great job lately for a lot of reasons. We have training contracts with Marty Bork that's coming up to expire in September. He'll be out of his indentured servitude, so to speak. That was 3 years. So he's mobile. Also, to reward them, the officers have shown up every day, every shift during the pandemic. We didn't have sick outs. We didn't roll back our shifts. They did a great job. They put themselves in harm's way. They got sick on duty, serving others, medical calls, crime calls, doing their job. And also, as you know from reading the town report, Jackson's the safest town in the state of New Hampshire, which is the second safest state in the country. And that's not a moniker that I give the town. That's an independent evaluation by Consumer Affairs. So they can't do really much better of a job, not that we're gonna stop trying. But it's important to reward them, to retain them, because it's so expensive to replace them. A brand new officer is going to be 24 weeks of lost labor because they can't work independently until they go to the 16-week academy and do an 8-week field training program. That's a half a year. Take a half a year officer's salary and throw it out the window because you don't get a lick of work. That's the kind of money we're talking about. And Sarah Clemens, you said something. You said, I believe in fair compensation, but fairness is dependent on comparison. We are the lowest starting wage in Carroll County. I'm the second lowest paid chief. I'm not complaining, but that's to give you a vision of what you're getting for what you're paying. And the 3% was a great trend, but things have changed and we have to change with them, and the smart ones will. Two departments that retain their officers regularly and with longevity, Madison and Freedom. They also have the highest starting wage. I'm not suggesting that it goes that high, but what I am suggesting is if you do believe in fair, don't make this cut.
Very good. I'm trying to watch the time for everyone to get equal time. Thank you. I think I saw another hand here somewhere. Yes.
Thanks, Liz. Jack Tracy. I have a question actually I'd like to direct to the chief, which is when you look at your survey, what does that pool on a year-on-year comparison look like year-on-year? Because we're hearing, there's headline figures of inflation 7.5%. I'm just trying to break it down to the regional parameters that you just described. Understand at least what we're out against when we're competing with these employees.
I'll tell you. So, starting wages in Carroll County. Is that what you're asking? What the comparison?
I'm asking for the year-on-year comparison to help everybody benchmark. And you have specialty skills, and there's a demand for that talent, and there's a year-on-year increase.
Sure.
And that's what we're talking about here, as well as the catch-up. So I understand the catch-up argument. I'm trying to understand what you see in terms of just benchmarking the whole pool of employees.
Most communities had a 3 to 4% regular increase. Yeah. Now, a lot of those are controlled by collective bargaining agreements. Like, for instance, Conway had a built-in 3%, and there's no end to it. It just keeps going on and going on. The Sheriff's Department had, I think they had a 4.33 because they had a 3-year contract. And I know that from my wife is a deputy sheriff. Now, they have a collective bargaining. Conway has a collective bargaining.
Okay.
Can I put it here? Conway has a collective bargaining. Conway has a collective bargaining agreement with that 3%, endless 3%. They recently just added 5% to it at their budget hearing, and that's going to be on the ballot. It looks like it has full support of the board and full support of the public because of retention problems. Conway's a flagship department in Carroll County. They have had patrol openings for 3 years, and that's how difficult it is. Now they have openings in dispatch. Generally, you're seeing that 3%, and I think that was a great trend because you can get behind, or it helps keep up with inflation and rewards retention. But there's been significant changes in the market, particularly with law enforcement. The state police has 50 openings. They used to get 350 applicants for 4 openings. They're getting 40 applicants, and none of them taking the job. They have 50. We're losing people quicker than we can replace them, and nobody's lining up. Also, too, there was Penny, you made a comment about insurance reimbursement in the workplace. I've worked at places that have those programs. Comry's one of them. And I will tell you, the first couple of years that that program started in Jackson, it was, you know, some people went after hammer and tong. It has saved the town of Jackson $206,000 in 6 years. That's real money. That's real money. So, you know, to say that's a terrible plan, that plan would have cost you 206, large. So I think you got to think about, if you care about being fair, it's fair by comparison. You got to look at those market forces, and that's what's happening in the workplace, in the regional workplace.
Okay. I'm going to take one more comment, and I believe the selectmen have another comment. Before I do, is there anyone that hasn't spoken that wants to make a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, Aaron Hubble, I just wanted to call attention to the comment that Barbara made, that with the amount proposed to be stripped out, is it correct that that will put no increases, that will strip all increase, that won't take it back to 3%, that'll take it to 0%, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Not yet, no, there's someone ahead of you, and I'm taking that as the last comment. You had a pretty good shot. The selectmen want to make a comment. I will reinforce what I said originally, not that it has any bearing on how you vote, what you feel. The selectmen, it's an advisory amendment. What the selectmen do and how they maneuver the line items is covered by the state statute and the Constitution. So it puts them in a kind of a tough position. I understand that. Do we listen to people? Do we do what we feel we need to do to manage the town? Just so that you realize, any cut on this, as I mentioned, whether it's this line item or whether it's any item in the warrant, that doesn't mean that it's going to totally go away. It may. It's going to be there. Tough call. That said, I will take one more comment, and then the selectmen are going to speak, and I'm going to call for a vote. You haven't spoken yet. Go ahead.
I have a question. My name is Nancy Davis. I have a question related to the gentleman that just spoke.
Can everybody hear you?
No.
They can't hear you.
The wages don't necessarily have a zero increase, right? That is up to the selectmen's discretion. They could take that $72,350 and take it out of another line item and still do all the pay rate increases.
Correct.
Yeah, but they have to take that 50,000 or whatever they wanted from other line items in the operating budget.
Correct.
The bottom line we vote is locked in, but not the line item.
Sound like the wages
Okay. I understand. I'm just saying, that is correct. They can maneuver lines to continue with some raises, it's their discretion. But the lines they maneuver takes money from that line. Okay? I got one, Larry had one last, he's tried a couple times, and then I'm going to have the selectmen, they want to speak again, and I'm going to call for a vote. Go ahead, make it.
That was my question, whether if they meant to pass with flat from the salaries. So that's the answer.
Well, okay. And somebody,
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words.
go ahead.
I suppose I...
It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on. I'm going to probably repeat some of the things I've already heard here, to be in radio too. But anyways, some of the things I'd like to say. Our greatest resource is our employees. Competition for labor is something we have to take seriously. The salaries that we proposed are in line with state norms. We looked at a lot of paperwork to figure that out, and they deserve every penny. And the other thing we have to talk about is COVID coverage. This government, this town ran incredibly smoothly. You would never know that we had to go through what we went through. And that's because of our office, with Julie Atwell, Julie Hoyt, Karen Breton, Gloria. They did the job that needed to be done under difficult conditions. And I'd like to jump to the highway department for a minute. And, you know, we have a new road agent. It's Gary Allen. He's sitting in the back over there. Okay? And he's good. He replaced Pat Kelly, Billy's son, who took a job in the private sector. We were sorry to see him, but we were very fortunate that Gary came in. And he was on the crew for 8 or 9 years, and now he's doing a great job. I think you can see that by the roads, our sidewalks. It looks terrific out there. And as far as our police department, Chief Pearlie and his officers, they're overseeing the small, I'm just doing Omni. You know, what are we, the safest town in New Hampshire, did you say it is, right?
Safest town in the state.
Right, so what else is there to say about that, right? All the boards, the trustees, the volunteers, there are so many, and they do so much for so little, really, okay? Our fire chief, Henry, building inspector, Kevin Bennett, they're there when we need them. It never fails, they're there when we need them. And the last thing I'd like to say is that this $70,000, if our numbers are correct, and I believe they are, because it came from a good source, equals about 15 cents on the tax rate. That's all I'd like to say.
Okay. All right. We are voting on the amendment. Is everybody clear on the amendment? Okay, it's an amendment to amend the operating budget down by $72,530, which we will correct when we get down through the list. I'm going to call for a voice vote, and if it goes so I can determine it, I'm going to rule on it. If not, I'll do a show of hands with your pink tabs, okay? All those in favor of the amendment passing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, the amendment's defeated. We go back to the line item. Is there any other questions on the line item on page 26 under the selectmen category? Any other questions other than what the raised amount is? Hearing none, I'm going to go to the next line item. Office of the Town Clerk. Is there any questions, comments, or whatever under the Office of Town Clerk? Hearing none? Oops. Don't. No, that wasn't a hand. It was a brush of the hair. Almost got you. I've hit him 3 times with my hand. So he starts crying. It's a whole lot. Okay, next line item. Financial administration. Again, we're on page 26. You've got your buttons, you've got your warrants. Any questions on that category? Okay. Assessing. Any questions on the line item assessing? Okay. Legal. Line item legal. Is there any questions on the legal line item? Comments?
We have a new attorney.
Okay. Would you like to, I'll allow you to introduce
Jason
that.
Dennis is our new attorney since Peter Malia became a state judge in the state of Maine. And so we want to welcome Jason, and he's been a resource to us already. So welcome to the table.
He's still with the firm that has been representing us for a number of years. Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Hope I never had, well, I know I won't. Okay. Personnel administration line item. Questions, comments? Okay. Planning and zoning boards. Okay. General government, parks and buildings. Okay. Cemeteries. Insurance. Line item insurance. Any questions, comments? Okay. The bottom line is building inspection, and the description and the buildup is on top of page 27. Is there any questions on line item building inspection? Okay. Next line item police. Any questions, comments on the police line item? Okay. Ambulance line item. Any question on the ambulance line item? All right, moving right along. Fire department, fire item, line item. Any questions on fire? Comments? Emergency management. Questions on emergency management line item? Okay. Highway administration. Questions on highway administration? Comments? Okay. The highway operating budget line item. Any questions, comments, or other on the highway line item? Okay, moving right along to page 28. That's the top line is a continuation. Continuation from the highway, so we'll cut that. Solid waste disposal. Any questions on line item solid waste disposal? Animal control. Questions on animal control? Right along. Public welfare. Any questions on public welfare? All right. Library. Library line item. Any comments, questions? Okay. Other conservation line item. Questions, comments? Okay. Other cultural and recreation line item. Next item is parks and recreation. Any questions, comments, other on parks and recreation? Debt service. Line item debt service. Is there any questions, comments on the debt service line item? Okay. All right. Well, that brings us to what I've referred to several times. The total operating budget as proposed is $2,473,512. The amendment to adjust that was defeated, so we're voting on the as proposed operating budget for the selectmen's request. All those in favor of appropriating $2,473,512 for the operating budget of the town, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Okay. Moving right along, the next category, pretty simple, but is agents to expend capital reserve funds. I believe that continues on page 29, correct? Yeah. And it continues. It's broken down further. Actually, it's not. No, I am incorrect. The item to expend capital reserve fund of $395,692 is a,
That was from last.
correct me, that's basically an accounting of what has been
From last year.
from last year. Is everybody clear on that? So they're not asking for any money in this, they're telling you what they've spent and where it went. I believe, is that correct?
Yeah, this is from the last year. So
Okay.
sorry, there's nothing for this year.
All right, okay. Okay, then we're going to move to Article 5. Article 5 is the actual appropriations to capital reserve funds. And there are 8 separate categories. It's not a new article, we've been doing this for quite some time. Do I hear a motion? Second? Can we state the names just for Karen to catch it?
Got that.
Yeah, and the second over here somewhere?
Well, right there.
Well, thank you. Is there any question or discussion? I can go down through them if you'd like, but it's pretty clear in your budgets, and I believe it's pretty much duplicate of what has been the last several years of those areas, I believe. Barbara just said yes, it is.
Correct.
Any questions, comments, suggestions? Certainly looks nice when we come to spend it, we have a lot of that money in the bank, so it's your tax dollars at work. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Article 6, this is appropriations to expendable trust funds. And that basically had the previous origination gives the selectmen authority to spend the expendable trust fund funds. Correct? Right. All right, do I have a motion? Jen, Karen, did you see Karen? Jen Anzali made a motion. Have a second? Second. Second. Okay. All right. Any questions on the expendable trust fund? I believe that is complete. No, one more on page 20, on page 30. One more on the top of page 30. You can total list. I think, again, I can go down through them if you'd like. If somebody has a question on them, we can deal with one or all. Any questions, discussions, what have you? Carry the third.
Bill, did you read the total amount when you...
On Article 5, did you?
I did not.
You didn't appropriate money.
You're correct.
I'm happy with that.
You can't fire me because I'm quitting. Okay, I apologize. We're back to Article 5 to make it official. We're reconsidering that, right?
Motion to reconsider.
To see if the town will vote to raise appropriate sum of $268,500 to be placed in the following capital reserve funds. Items 1 through 8 as listed. It totals $268,500. Any questions? Any further discussion? I'm going to ask it again. A motion to move and second to make it official, correct?
Seconded.
All right, moved and seconded. Not necessary, but that's technical. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Okay, Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise the appropriate sum of $103,500 to be placed in the following expendable trust fund previously established. And they total 1 through 7, 7 being on page 30 of your town report. To add to that total. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Motion again, Karen, Jen. Second? Peter? Yeah, Peter Benson. Is there any discussion? Not? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Okay, Article 7. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,256 to support the following list. List 1 through 8, which is we've done with those lists as, excuse me, 1 through 9. Wash my glasses here. Recommended by the board 300. is there anybody who'd like to make a motion on that?
I motion, David Campbell.
Second, Ken Kimball.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Article 8, fire truck. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $695,000 for the purpose of purchasing a fire truck. $490,000 will be withdrawn from the fire department truck capital reserve fund, and the balance to come from the unreserved fund balance recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 and 0. Motion?
Tom McCauley.
Motion by Tom, second.
Second, Dave Moran.
Okay. Is there any discussion, question? Selectman would like to make a comment?
Well, I'd like to ask, is it okay to ask Jay?
Sure.
Chief, Chief, could you sort of explain this article to folks, let them know what we're doing?
We're replacing a 1989, 30 years old truck. Basically buying the same thing as a tank truck, so basically what we're doing.
But it's an automatic.
Automatic transmission, make it easier for people to drive. A little bit bigger tank, carrying more water.
Does everybody understand?
Neutral aid truck.
It's a replacement of a 33-year-old.
33 truck.
Okay, we have, yes, sir.
Paul Luminar. Have you ordered this truck?
Not yet.
So will it be ordered this year?
Yes, it'll take about a year and a half to
When will you
build.
receive it?
Year and a half. Takes about a year and a half to build with approximate market conditions right now.
And will it fit into the front firehouse?
We gotta make the wall a little bigger on one bay with the old highway garages because it's a little bit longer than the existing one that we're replacing.
Thank you.
Ted? You're good with that answer? I just want to make sure you're okay, Ted. All right. All right, any other, yes, sir?
Yeah, Larry Garland. If you've got to modify the fire station to fit this in, does that cost part of the purchase, or does that come from somewhere else?
That's just coming out of my building maintenance. It's not a huge cost at all.
It comes out of the maintenance line?
Yeah, building maintenance, which is, and that's a pretty, we're making it happen.
Did I answer your question? Any other questions, comments? Just like to point out that by taking the balance out of the reserve fund balance, it's a zero tax impact article for you, just so you want to make sure you're aware of that. Do it. Karen, Jerry, the report.
Jerry Dougherty. I speak in favor of this article. I would say that the money that's in the undesignated fund balance is taxpayer money. So it's not like we haven't, you can't say that the zero being appropriate. We've already spent that money as taxpayers. But we've been putting money into this account for years now, and we're getting close to the purchase price. However, what we've been putting away hasn't kept up with inflation. And the longer we wait to purchase this truck, the more it's going to cost us. And we've been putting money away already to spend this, and we've put away the majority of money already. So for using the money that we've already spent in taxes is, I think, a smart use of that money. Because it allows us to save a little bit of money in the long run. The longer we wait, the more it's going to cost and the more we have to put away for it. So I think it's a smart way to use the undesignated fund balance. And it's a good thing to do, and we're ready for it now. And as far as the needs of the building is concerned, for under $15,000, probably under $10,000, would be to modify the existing fire station to fit the fire truck in.
Any other questions or comments on this article? Scott, you don't have a question, you're just resting your arm. Well, you had your hand up there. Any other questions or comments? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Article 9, Facilities Committee. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of forming a facilities committee to explore the needs of all town buildings and facilities, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0 law. And I'm assuming that the existing facilities committee that you appointed a few years ago would be, this would replace that, but it would look at all.
That was a fire station.
That was strictly a fire
feasibility.
station, yeah, I just
That
want to
would
make sure
be-
people are
This is
clear
not
on
the
that.
same as that.
This is all town buildings, the last committee was just strictly fire station.
Correct.
Donut money.
I would like to talk about this.
Well,
Go ahead.
I need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Will, and seconded, Ken, okay? Absolutely.
The purpose of this committee is really to do a long-range study with someone from the school board, the select board, the planning board, and many volunteers from the taxpayers and the voters to decide what the town needs. We obviously had a lot of work put into the fire station and what was needed there, and we don't have any money generated for or asked for on the ballot this year for that. The school board asked for $250,000 to start with an expansion for the school, and that was not approved. And I think this is a really prudent move to start a committee and actually sort of resurrect something that hasn't been done in the town for 15 to 20 years. So we really want to get a lot of the community involved, to find out what the needs of the community are as it surrounds facilities and just the general needs of the community with all involved. So we're working cohesively instead of not one hand not knowing what the other is doing. So I'm really looking forward to this committee being hopefully approved tonight. Thank you.
Sarah?
Yes, Sarah Clemens. I was wondering if you could address, the planning board in years past has done this type of planning and stuff. So I was wondering if that could be done in-house rather than have to pay $25,000.
Yeah, actually, we are considering doing that, and Sarah Kimball was very generous in sending me her files already from when this was done last, so we're hoping to use the expertise of our community and not have to spend money if we have to do a mailing or whatever that might come into place, but we're not looking to hire a strategic planning firm. We're really hoping to use the expertise of our committees and our town taxpayers and voters to get this done, and I feel like we can do that. And we also have North Country Council if we need them as well, so hope we don't have to spend anything.
Yes, sir.
Andrew Howe, what would be the mandated timetable for doing the study and providing a report to the town and taxpayers?
I don't know if we're that far in advance right now. If this gets approved tonight, we'd like to start meeting in April and go from there. So I wish I could answer your question and say that we'd have something in 6 months, but I'm hoping that we have things progressing quarterly that we can report to the taxpayers and the voters and come up with something, so perhaps a year from now we'll have a lot more information on what the town needs.
Go ahead, and Selectman DeCrucio wants to speak. Go ahead.
Bill Terry, I'm chair of the planning board. When I looked at requirements for the capital improvement plan, as you may know, 3 years ago, we made an effort to revisit this, and we had very little response from the committee that was doing it. And no one, from the school to the department heads, were forward in providing information to move forward, and we moved on. My concern is that we have a program that everyone gets to have input. And we didn't have that. We had a very limited amount and with very little foresight, to be honest. And my concern is that if we're going to do a capital improvement plan, as you said, it's been done by the planning board in the past, and my concern, I think our attorney may need to assist us in that, if this warrant article is not specific to say that it's being done by the select board, by a special committee, it then falls by default to the planning board. And I'm not sure this is worded sufficiently to say that this is a separate committee that would allow that. So I have some concern about this. I also have a concern about the fact that all the input will be done by town employees or volunteers, and why do we need $25,000?
The selectmen do want to speak. I'll take your commentary and let them
I just
speak.
was going to ask for the attorney to address the money situation, because it is a little bit unclear. It's obviously not appropriated into the capital reserve fund, so it doesn't go into an account that stays there. What happens at the end of the fiscal year, this fiscal year, if the money isn't spent, it doesn't lapse, it doesn't lapse, or is it for that committee to spend in following years as well? So what happens to the money, I guess, once it's appropriated?
That's a good question. And so with the language of the article as it's worded, it doesn't answer that question for you if it's not spent this year. And so my answer would be, and I can look into this further, and I can actually even do a little research on my phone and get back to you, is that the money would just be available for the town, potentially even to go into an unreserved type status, which could impact taxes. It wouldn't necessarily have to be used, similar to what you heard from the moderator about discretion. It's not the same situation when you have specific appropriations. And so it would be there and could carry over to another year. It could be used and put on the warrant next year to be reappropriated, if that makes sense. It wouldn't necessarily automatic. Sorry, I didn't have the microphone close enough there. I just realized that. It wouldn't necessarily be used for the exact same purpose, if not reappropriated. So I think that hopefully addresses your question, at least somewhat adequately.
Before I take another question, the selectmen want to make a comment to this effect.
I think I'm part of this is, we had this debate about the fire station, and we heard about the school and things that they wanted to do, and all of a sudden we're facing maybe $8-9 million in bonds. And that's an awful lot of money. And so we kind of slowed the process down here a little bit. And that was the idea, is to let's get everybody together. Now, as far as the $25,000, I don't know if we'll ever use that, because it's going to be us. It's going to be the people, the volunteers, that will be looking at all of this and try and figure out what we can do as manageable. I can tell you this, the fire department does need work. We know that. And from what I'm hearing from the school, work is going to be needed there too. But we can determine how much we want to spend and not be told you're going to have to do it this way. We can do it the way we want to do it and work it into dollars that make sense for us in our tax rate. So that's what this is all about, really. It gives us an opportunity to sort of slow down a little bit. And the way things are right now, we're going to be slowing down, all right, for a while. But we can work towards something that needs to be done.
I just would offer, and I will get back to you, but I believe selectmen can correct this, but the 2 years ago, $25,000 article that was specific to the fire station, at the end of that year, I believe you encumbered those funds, so it was still available for the second year in that category. Is that in fact? You're gonna have to the 25,000 of the fire station's feasibility study. At the end of the first year, we hadn't finished. You encumbered the funds,
right,
and it's kept it earmarked for that specific purpose.
Right.
I believe this would be a similar thing if they decide by the end of December there's money left. They can encumber it, earmark it to stay in this category area.
Could I
Sure,
If
I'm
we
just trying to
were-
help explain it. that's all.
And Bill, maybe you can add your expertise
Microphone,
on this.
please.
Thank you.
If we were to remove the appropriated sum of $25,000 and just have a committee, so we're recommending this facilities committee with no dollars in the article, would that make a difference as to what you were saying, Bill?
I strongly support that we have a facilities committee that does this. The select board has the option of either choosing it to be a community activity that is controlled by the select board or deferring it to the planning board. RSA says that if you don't specifically say, it defaults to the planning board. So that's what the state says. So you have a choice. Do you want this to be a facilities committee that's operated through the select board as the primary? And I'm fine with it. We don't need more work to do on the planning board. But the most important thing really is not about who's doing what, it's whether we get the input we need to make the decisions to move forward, and that's what I'm supporting.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily supporting that we need 25,000 or not 25,000.
Okay.
I just don't know why it's here.
Yeah. Jen?
Hi, Jen Zaldi, School Board. I would propose that you can knock it down to $1,000, but keep some money in there for mailings and some minor marketing to reach out to the community at large. And if there's anything that we would like to do, looking at buildings or facilities. And I'd like to remind people that this is not what we've done in the past. This is a joint presentation from the school and the town, and we are casting our net wide to you, the community members at large, who have an amazing background to bring to the table. And we're also looking to see what perceived needs are in the town. This is not specific to the fire station and or the school. This is casting the net again, looking at the community at large. What's our demographic? What are we seeing in the future? What do we really need as a town moving forward? So it's not specific, again, to the fire station and or the school. We're really looking at town-wide needs, and we're looking for you as community members to step forward and be part of this process for the next year, I would like to say, and be done with it in a year or less, to say what are our needs going forward, and then come back to the community with an idea. I would like to leave some money in that fund so that we can do some communications, but I think 25,000 might be a little bit high. So I just wanted to reiterate what.
That's great, Jenna. I just would add a comment. Having sat on the first feasibility study committee of the fire department, 1 year as an ad hoc, 2 years as an appointed committee with a specific task chaired by the selectmen. We did one mailing. I believe Peter was very instrumental in a lot of the information. 2 years ago now on the fire station, and that mailing to mail to the people was $1,000. So one mailing to keep you people abreast of what's going on is $1,000. I'm just adding that out there that it's totally up to the people, as you've heard, what you want to do. You've got to bear in mind that if you want to get feedback and things of that nature, there's got to have to be some funds spent. If you just, in your discussion on whether you do this or amend it, it's totally your pleasure, and I'm sure the selectmen will listen to that. Now, I've got a couple more comments. People that haven't spoke, it's Jerry, and yeah.
Again, I speak in favor of this article as it is at $25,000. And just to speak to a little bit to the process and how this works. The Board of Selectmen can, at any time, with or without this article, form subcommittees to look into anything they want. And this is asking, the Select Board is considering having a facility committee look into the town's needs as a whole. What do we do with the grazing garage? What's the long-term plan for the old library? Those kinds of things. And it's a good example of the grazing garage. It might cost some money to hire an engineer to study what we can do on that property, because right now I don't think anybody really knows. You know, we tear down that building, what can we rebuild there? And it's those kinds of things that they're asking to look into. And that's asked would never fall down to the planning board. And as far as the planning board's role is concerned, in the 10-year plans that the planning board is supposed to come up with, planning specifically for how an addition of the schools needed, how fire stations could be built, that goes beyond the scope of what the planning board does. The planning board would then take the information from a facility committee such as this and then plug it into the 10-year plan. That's the role of the planning board in that operation. As far as the $25,000 is concerned, that money would be at the use of the facility committee, but all expenditures are still approved by the board of selectmen regardless of that $25,000. That facility committee wouldn't be able to spend that money, only the board of selectmen can. When the planning board's given $2,000 a year for expenditures to cover that they need, again, that's not the planning board deciding to spend that money, that's the select board deciding to spend that money. At the end of the year, the $25,000, whatever isn't spent would go into the unencumbered fund balance and ultimately back to taxpayers in that regard, but couldn't be spent by the facility committee the following year. So that's how the process of that works. And so if they need $1,000 for mailings, then one thing they can do with it, but they might need $5,000 to do a study of the Grayson property to understand what could be done there. And those are the kind of expenses that might be come out of such a thing. And I've been involved with a lot of building projects in this town for many years now. And honestly, I'm starting to get a little burned out with it. And there's a lot of really good, talented people in this town. And we are kind of hoping that the facility committee would be maybe filled and volunteered with people that do have interest in doing this. It would be a great thing to do. And I think Tisha and Ashley are already volunteered to be part of that.
Okay, I'm going to allow two more, only to try to get someone that hasn't spoken, because I think this is a very important, and it does need the amount of time it needs. So I'm going to go for a couple more comments, and I think there were two more names up here, and at least one over here that haven't spoken. Yes.
I guess we're all dancing around. I'm in favor in principle of taking a step back and looking at our assets and seeing what we need to do, projecting it forward. What struck me was, why did we pick 25,000? You know, because in answering that question, I started to gain confidence that this thing is a real thing and not just, you know, a line item that just pays for whatever, you know? Follow? That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the clarity on how the 25,000 is going to be spent. And what was the thought process that went into coming up with 25?
I'll try to answer that for them. I know I shouldn't, but we've all worked very closely with them. And a pie in the sky dollar isn't just in the event we do a mailing, but it gives that committee, the selectmen actually, the ability, in the case of i.e. a fire station, there was a lot of architectural and engineering stuff put into just a proposal to do that. And engineers are very expensive. Designers, architects, input from different agencies. It allows, whether it's $100 spent or up to the whole $25,000, it's totally controlled by the selectmen in this case. And I'm sure they're very frugal. They're not going to just let it go, but it's a pie in the sky number. I know. I threw that number at them only for reference. We used 25 for the last one. We spent down near all of it over 2 years. 25, that's all the town's facilities could be not even close to enough money to do a good plan to give you the idea of what you want.
It was a starting point.
But anyway, it's a starting point. And again, just offering that is to help clarify what your decision is. I'm going to take, there was one more comment over here, and I know I have one over here that haven't spoken. I think Peter, and then Julie.
I think the last time we went through this process, 20 some odd years ago, for as smart and as engaged as we all were, we had a full town, basically charrette at Black Mountain. We had over 100 people show up, and there was lots of follow-up. But what we did need there was some objective facilitation help. There wasn't anybody in town that did it. We needed somebody from the outside looking at us as a whole. So I think the other part of this, $25,000, is maybe we would pay for some facilitation to help us along the process. Somebody that doesn't have a dog in the hunt, if you will, that could help us through getting through where we need to get.
All right, Julie.
I just wanted to clarify the $25,000. The only way that it can be encumbered is if there's a signed contract regarding, you know, services that will be done in the future. Otherwise, as Jason said, it would go back to unreserved fund balance.
Thank you.
Is there any other comment from someone that has not spoken?
Hi, Jennifer Pribble, and I just wanted to speak in favor of the facilities committee. I think that we're all really invested in our town, and I think that we're very smart and thoughtful people, but I do think that having a moderator or having funds available to seek professional guidance on some of these ideas is going to be really critical in moving it forward. You know, as we think about how all of our town properties are going to sort of integrate and serve us all, we can all agree that our needs have changed drastically in the last 3 years, and none of us have a magic ball for the future, but making sure that our spaces are flexible and able to meet our needs, I think we're definitely going to need to have some resources available to make the best proposal going forward.
You got volunteer number 2.
I can't wait.
Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote on this, okay, so it's been, a motion's been made and seconded, we've had plenty of discussion. I'm sorry, I'll take this last one, Will, if that's your hand up.
Sure, Will Moretti. I'm also in favor of this. I think it would be very helpful, but as someone with I guess an expansive vocabulary, and someone who has worked with the town boards before, I sympathize with Bill Terry's comment that the wording of the article is a little unclear on who exactly would be facilitating this committee, whether it would fall to the planning board or whether it would fall to the selectmen. My question is, would changing the wording, or rather enhancing the wording of this article, be considered a housekeeping change that could be made tonight, or would that have to be reconsidered?
From the Secretary of State's office, to answer that, well, the wording is not an issue in the sense that it's the intent of the article. It's what is the article doing, and the wording, whether it's housekeeping, a clarification, and I've talked to the Secretary of State, believe me, it's not a big issue. It basically a generalized wording of an article, as long as it's warned on warrant, which it was, as long as the people have the opportunity to discuss it. The body of the town has a lot of power, a lot of authority with their vote. But the wording of the article for the selectmen to act, as long as the generalized intent is the town either wants to do this or doesn't, and if they want to do it, it's to do town building facility study to report back to the selectmen. That's a very legal thing that they, so don't get hung up on the actual specific words. The general intent, and I can dig out all the paperwork and the RSAs you like, but Department of Revenue Administration kind of is the watchdog on how these articles are written and how they're voted on. That's not going to be an issue as long as they stay with the intent of that article. So I hope that clarifies that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. One more, and then I'm calling the vote.
And this is just very quick, please, because I think you are glossing over a couple of RSAs that are very specific to this.
I'd be happy to cite all the RSAs I referred to, sir. So
yes,
I take exception to that.
If we could, please, if the intention is for the select board to operate a facilities committee, then let's
I will answer this. I'm going to cut that off. I will answer this. If you'd like to make an amendment to clarify wording, I'd be happy to do it. However, I can cite RSAs, and I will. And I'm taking it is totally fine how this is worded.
Please, all I'm asking is that if I'm trying to work with you.
Exactly. I'm trying to clarify what you're asking.
If our intention is for the select board to have a facilities committee, which doesn't say, but that's our intention.
Exactly.
Then we're going to vote.
And I believe they could answer that if that's their intention and on to answer your question. That's not a problem. I'm just saying that it hasn't gone without researching, because I was assuming this may be a long discussion, and it's a very important discussion that everybody should have input.
I just don't want an issue after the fact.
I understand that. Can you answer the fact that what the select board, what was your intention of this out? Well,
To form a facilities committee.
thank you very much. And that's what they've done. So it's, if the selectmen presented it, the selectmen wanted, they have the authority to do it, that kind of clarifies that. And I think the biggest thing is to get the town involved going forward for the next year to do all of these things. That's what their intention is, and that's what we're trying to do. So with that, I'm going to call for a vote, okay? So Article 9, to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum of $25,000 for purpose of forming a facilities committee to explore the needs of all town buildings and facilities recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Thank you. Article 10, Mount Washington Valley Supports Recovery Coalition, and it's a petitioned article. To see if the town of Jackson, New Hampshire will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,500 for the Mount Washington Valley Supports Recovery Coalition programs, family, peer support, recovery, referral, and housing programs for substance and use disorder. Do I have a motion? Okay, Karen, call a motion. Second? Seconded? Okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Article 11, acquisition or sale of land, buildings, or both. To see if the town will vote to adopt RSA 41:14-A to allow the select board to acquire or sell land, buildings, or both, provided, however, they shall first submit any such proposed acquisition or sale to the planning board and to the Conservation Commission to review and recommendation by those bodies. This article will remain in effect until rescinded by a majority vote. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 3-0. Do I have a motion? You get it, Karen? Motion by second? Second. Second, against Scott. Any discussion? Yes.
Linda Tierney, 2 questions. How much tax will the town make on that land? And it does say that it will not be further developed, but would that mean that they could not cut down any trees? Because that's a pretty long, if you know Jackson Highlands going up, that's a pretty long stretch.
I think you're on Article 12, and we're on Article 11 so far. So hold that.
Am I jumping the gun?
You've
Yeah.
gone ahead.
Well, that's why I'm here, so now you'll know.
Good catch, Robert.
I don't have to say it
I didn't know
again.
what you were going to say until you asked me. I was going to let them answer that one. Is there any other question on this article? Yes.
Just one question. It says that it would consult the planning board and conservation commission, but would it require a public hearing as well, or is that not in the RSA?
I would have to, I could look up the RSA, but we would have to.
I would just anecdotally say it seemed like it would be a good thing to do, to have a public hearing on that. Thank you.
Be the regular meeting. I think it would be a regular selectmen's meeting in a sense that they would bring that to a discussion for public. So noted, Peter, we can verify that for you. And I do have those with me. Article 12. Excuse me. Excuse me. I'm jumping ahead now.
Could you just explain that a bit? Does this mean that the selectmen can just buy property without a vote of the town?
What's the definition of
Yeah,
acquire?
Could you just explain it?
Someone answer that. Can you take that? Go ahead.
Yeah, that would be great. Microphone down? How long is that? I turned it on.
So what I will do to attempt to begin to answer the question is read from RSA 4114A, the prevalent parts that deal with what happens if this article is passed. And so if it's adopted, then the the town does have some authority subject to dealing with the planning board. And then after, so I'm quoting from the statute now, after the select board receives the recommendation of the planning board and the conservation commission, it also actually includes the heritage commission and the historic district commission. If the building lies within a defined district where such board or commission exists, they should hold 2 public hearings, at least 10 but not more than 14 days apart, on the proposed acquisition, sale, demolition, or disposal. Provided, however, upon the written petition of 50 registered voters presented to the select board prior to the select board's vote, the proposed acquisition, sale, demolition, or disposal shall be inserted as an article in the warrant for the town meeting. So 50 folks could kick this transaction to the next town meeting, according to the statute. So it does get noticed for a meeting, depending on the district, if it's in one of the districts enumerated in the statute. So it's not a 100% carte blanche, to answer your question, according to the statute.
I just remember if
Okay, go ahead, you started off.
I just remember when we got the Grace Inn property 30-plus years ago, we had a town meeting and, we had an open discussion about it and voted on it. So I just wondered how this would change that, or what, and also what was the rationale for putting that in here?
I remember that in meetings there was a specific intent to this because we had to wait until town meeting to sell town property. That was a very small parcel that's on owned by the town. I'm drawing a blank as to what it was, but that was the intent of this. So it's not the intent today to purchase any land or any additional land in the name of the town, or to sell anything other than some of the smaller parcels we have. What this intent was to do, so we didn't have to wait until another town meeting to purchase or sell. That was the simplified answer.
I believe there was another hand up before you started, so I'll get back to you, John. Go ahead.
Jerry Doherty. So Barbara, that was the intent of this. As it stands now, in order for the town to sell land, it takes an approval at this meeting for the town to do so. And I was actually a little bit concerned about this article because you have very limited public land. But the reason why they brought this up now is because of Article 12. And it's a small piece of land that's really kind of technical in why it's there, and who might the rightful owners of it be. So, I mean, it's not the kind of situation where the town might be really, us, the voters, might really be concerned about what's happening here. But because of that, they would have to take that as an article to sell that small parcel of land. But because we do have such a limited land in town, this was concerning to me. But as the attorney pointed out, we have the ability to prevent the town, the selectmen, from selling it simply by 50 registered voters, which is not a very hard bar to clear in order to get them to stop and do something. So this is really kind of more of a housekeeping, bookkeeping kind of situation where it allows the selectmen some flexibility to facilitate things that are of little consequence that make the most sense. So I would speak in favor of passing this article so that they can do the kind of things that would happen in Article 12. And I think that we trust the selectmen enough that they're not going to just go off and sell the Grace Inn property to us. Certainly, if they tried to do something like that, it would be pretty easy to come up with 50 people to stop them from doing that kind of thing. So I think this is
I get you though, but just maybe a helpful clarification. Article 11, Article 12, and Article 13 are somewhat all related to a specific issue that has been worked on. That may be clarified, but go ahead. Is that what you were asking too? Okay.
And
all right.
there are several other notes.
Go ahead. We've got a little more clarification. I'll get to you, Bob.
There are a couple of exceptions in the statute as well that I will just share with the meeting now, which is that the provisions, if this was passed, do not apply to the sale of land, and meaning the select board shall have no authority to sell. And there's a couple things. Town-owned conservation land, which is managed and controlled by the Conservation Commission. Any part of a town forest established under RSA 31-110, and then any real estate that has been given, devised, or bequeathed to the town for charitable or community purposes, except that there's some exceptions to that in different statutes, which is what happens in statutes. You have to look at 10 before you know the answer sometimes. So those exceptions are baked into the 4114 pi, meaning that further limits what the select board could do unilaterally.
Okay.
I just want clarification on the word acquire. So that includes, in addition to acquiring by gift or eminent domain, the ability to purchase land. And I'm talking about selling it, but what is it also include purchasing land?
Correct. It's acquire,
Yes,
acquisition or sale.
acquire and or sell, it's again, it's,
Acquire had a lot of
they
different.
could probably further explain, but it may make more sense if we discuss the other two articles as well, I'm not totally sure. And I'll defer to our attorney again, would it help if it's realized what the three articles do as a group? It's pretty specific to something that you've been working with, I believe, is that correct?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I clarify Bob's question. So, yeah, it does allow them to acquire land, but as an example, if we wanted to purchase land, they would have to first appropriate the money, because they can't buy something without the money. So that appropriation would have to be approved by the legislative body, meaning us. And what this would allow them to do is that they would then wouldn't have to have another article to purchase that land. They could do so by going through the provisions of this RSA. They could also put it on the warrant, and you could appropriate money to buy specific land and use it for that. This, again, just allows the select board to facilitate business transactions without having to come back to the legislative body in matters that don't really pertain to the legislative body. Would be the intent of it.
Is everybody clear on that at this point? Okay, one more now.
Yeah, I just have a question as to why now? Throughout the history of Jackson, the select people haven't had this authority. Why not wait, to buy or sell and get the approval of the town, I guess?
Articles 12 and 13 have been going on for almost a year, and so this was, like I said, the intent to move things along so we didn't have to wait until the next town meeting. The sale of town property in Article 13 has been going on for quite a bit, and it's prolonging the new purchaser's ability to build. So it puts things down the road close to a year possibly. So this would allow us to move things along a lot quicker. Right. So we didn't have to wait until the next town meeting.
Okay. I'm going to call for a vote on this. Article 11, and we're going to take Article 12 and Article 13 in order. Maybe it will help make some more sense. Everybody clear on what we're voting on? A yes or no vote? Yes approves the article, no vote disapprove the article. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Okay. Article 12, land swap. To see if the town will vote to accept 0.045 acres of land from map V10, parcel 212B, with said transferred land to become a portion of the Vista Way right-of-way, and simultaneously transfer 0.045 acres of land from the Vista Way right-of-way to map V-10, parcel 212B, with said transferred land to become a portion of that parcel. The purpose of this transfer being to resolve historical encroachment issues by both parties onto the land of another. Land areas being transferred are shown on the plan developed by Horizons Engineering. Said plan to be submitted to and approved by the Jackson Planning Board, and once approved, will be recorded at the Carroll County Register of Deeds, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 300.
So moved.
Been moved, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Did you get that, Karen? All right. Well, is there any discussion? Okay, none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So voted. Article 13, sale of town property.
to see if the town will vote to permit the town of Jackson to sell certain undevelopable real estate property owned by the town of Jackson as tax lot V-7/53 and tax lot V-7/54 and located on Jackson Highlands Road to the owner of tax lot V-7/55. The transfer will include a reservation of a 15-foot wide drainage and maintenance easement for the benefit of the town road. Said easement to be drafted by the owner of tax map V-7/55 for the town's review and approval, and except for driveway access and related utilities to residential use by the owner of tax lot V-7/55, tax lot V-7/53, and tax lot V-7/54 will not be further developed. Recommended by the Board of Selectmen 300. Can you repeat that? Take a drink of water first. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Ken Gibbons.
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, what I said earlier, sorry guys. Linda Tierney, my questions are, what would the town make on tax on that land? And also, it says it can't be developed, but could the person who bought that, could they clear the trees going up? Because it is a long stretch, if you guys are familiar going up Black Mountain, when you take that right going up to Jackson Highlands, it's a big long stretch. So I mean, that would be substantial of tree cutting.
You want to answer that?
Yeah. When we talked about this, there are two undevelopable slots, and we sold them for, I believe it was $25,000, which was between what the sort of market value and the assessed value were. And so we had talked about this with the purchaser, or the owner of the map V-7/55. So they are going to use that property. We have proper easement and setback so that the road can be maintained, but I can't remember if we talked about cutting. And are you saying you wanted them to cut?
Oh, God,
or
no.
we don't?
No,
and
I'm totally against this.
Yeah, so I believe we did talk about that, and that's why we talked about the setback.
We did, we're reasonably sure that it was not going, the idea was so that
I can't
forest,
hear you.
that forest would not be cut down.
Yeah, so there will be no cutting. There's going to be proper easement, proper drainage, and it's not developable for anything else. So it's purely to get access to his property.
But just so I'm clear, are we talking about a couple of $100s that the town is going to get for this?
Well, we'll get $25,000 for the sale of the property.
Right.
And then we'll collect the taxes on that moving forward, correct?
Right, so my question to you guys is that worth it? I'm against it.
Okay.
Sarah?
Yes, with this transaction, could you tell me if it is going to be in the deed that there could be no cutting?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Lori Green. I live on Jackson Highlands Road, and I am quite concerned because those two parcels, though they're skinny and long, they go from the bottom of 16B all the way up to Maple Bush. And my driveway is right smack dab in the middle of that. I'm not really, it's somewhat of a dangerous curve to go around where my driveway is, and then there's a driveway just above me, and then another driveway across from Maple Bush. And I think it would be quite unsafe, and I'm not quite sure how they would determine where the driveway would go, but I also believe that this owner of this property also is grandfathered in for a driveway under the bush, which seems to make a lot more sense to me. And I am very concerned about the pristine loveliness of dragging up Jackson Highlands Road and the safety of the driveway location, and then also, what if I wanted to purchase that?
Right.
I mean, I'd be interested in that.
What can you see if they can answer this?
Kevin Bennett, Can you speak to this property and any of the concerns that Lori had?
Yeah, I think I can.
Do you want
Concern on the driveway.
Do you want to come up to the microphone? Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I predict all this
Kevin's our town building inspector. He's involved in a lot of those. You may not know Kevin about this.
The driveway, along with the highway department, we look at the driveway entrance to make sure there's sight distance. And I did see a second septic plan that showed the driveway coming out onto Jackson Highlands. So, what is the safe distance on that? I suggested early on that the town just give them an easement for a driveway and the town to hang on to the property. And that would give them the benefit of a driveway and the town would still have that property and no trees would be cut down. Half of that property is designated as wetlands too. It's been all marked out. That's basically it. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, Sarah.
My question is, was this property publicly noticed for sale, and was it put out to everybody that might want to purchase it? Was it do you not have to, if it's town land, put it out to public bid, or?
No, it's on the warrant today.
No, but
It's been discussed at meetings, but it has never been put publicly on the market.
It was that these the persons wanting to purchase it came to you to.
Correct.
So when they did that, you didn't feel that it would warrant to say, okay, we've got something here, maybe we should put it out to public notice that we're contemplating selling this land?
That's correct.
You did not do that?
That's correct.
Yeah, questions from me or? The selectman wants to comment. Is there any other comments, Jerry and then?
I would ask Board of Selectmen, what's the benefit to the town of selling this land?
We've been
We've been asked by several taxpayers why we have certain property on our books, and it would get it off the books and into the tax rolls, which is very insignificant. I totally agree with you, but it's just property that doesn't benefit the town in any way. So to sell it, it would be $25,000 into the bank, and so that was our thought on this process.
Fair to say the only benefit to the town is $25,000 and a couple $100 a year in taxes?
Correct.
So my question wasn't answered. Why can't I buy it?
I'll go in with her.
It's not sold yet, so, yeah. Again, I think, if we voted not to sell the property tonight, then it would be something that we would have to consider.
Just an observation, and I could be wrong, but through the many years of training for tax collectors, they make it very clear that when towns do sell it, they always put it out to bid and they're required. I don't know if that fits this circumstance, but that's just what I've been told and what we've drilled into our heads in training.
Bert. Can you comment on this? You're the town
Yeah, no,
engineer.
I reviewed the original septic system design for the town, but for Phil's the town engineer, I'm Paul's town engineer.
Can you come use the microphone? I can hear you, Phil, sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I reviewed the original septic system design, or the first design for this project, and the first thing I saw was they had the driveway off of Maple Bush. And the driveway comes down a fairly steep grade for over 500 feet, and under their town regulations, they're required to build an emergency vehicle turnaround at the house. So to do this, the people building the house would have a steep driveway, so your potential for erosion is much higher. You need an emergency vehicle turnaround on that. You need a passing lane for emergency vehicles for the driveway. And so if there's if JA or the fire department's got to get in there, it would be much difficult if they're stuck with coming off of Maple Bush. If you just come out straight, the driveway's like a third of the length out to Jackson Highlands. It's a flat grade. From a sort of an engineering perspective, it makes all the sense in the world to go out to Jackson Highlands.
Does that help with anybody else that hasn't spoken yet, and I'll take one more comment.
And,
Go ahead.
how much land is involved, and how did the town come to own that piece of land? Just curious.
I don't know the exact amount of acreage. It's under an acre, Kevin?
It's 0.9 acres.
0.9 acres, and I don't know how we came to own it. Anybody?
That's the both parcels, Kevin.
That's the strip that the town owns right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Going over both parcels, it's
Yeah, that's
okay. So total, both parcels, 0.9, just to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good. All right, I got one more. Go ahead, Sarah, and then I'll take Bob, and then I'm going to call it over.
Well, I just feel that it is, I would recommend voting it down in the sense that if all people weren't notified that this was a possibility, I think the town is opening itself up to some concern, because we just heard from 2 other neighbors that they would be interested in it, and they knew nothing about it. And I agree with Karen. I think that maybe the lawyer can answer this question, because I do feel that if it's a town property, there should be public notice that it's for sale.
Okay, I go to Bob, and then if the selectmen have any more, or the attorney, I'll listen to it, or let it go. Go
I
ahead.
think Kevin made a recommendation that the town could just grant as a driveway easement.
You gotta speak up, or we can't hear you up here, and they probably can't hear you over your left.
I think Kevin made a recommendation that just the town provide a driveway easement so that the vegetation, the rest of the vegetation could be kept intact. And why was that recommendation turned out?
They've heard you, that it's an ongoing.
We didn't, but first, when Kevin first came to us and talked about it, and he mentioned the easement, I thought that was a pretty good idea. So, but when the board got together and we finally did a vote, it turned out that this was considered the best idea of all. But there's credence to the idea of doing easement instead. I agree with that. And that too.
Or what now? We have to notice something. Putting out the notice also, I guess. So I said the comment was also made that there's credence to do the easement, there's credence to put it up for open sale. They're just making comments here as we go. I'm going to, if there's anybody that has not spoken that feels they need to speak on this, I'm going to call a vote, and your vote will determine what they do. Last question, last comment, very quickly.
I would just say that I'd like to see this defeated, and for the selectmen to reconsider the easement. And in the future, when we sell town land, have public hearings, and put it out to bid. And for a town that has an undesignated fund balance of over $1 million, $25,000 is being penny wise and pound foolish. So I recommend voting this down.
Okay. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of passing this article as written, signify by saying aye. Well, you need your big slip there right now. All those opposed? Nay. Declare the article defeated. Thank you for all the comments. I'm sure it's... Anyway, move on. Article 14, Prospect Farm General Management Plan. To see if the town will vote to appropriate the Conservation Commission's Prospect Farm General Management Plan 2021 at https://www.jackson.new Hampshire or Conservation Commission recommended unanimously by the Conservation Commission, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 300.
So moved, Laura, I think.
So it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Dick, I take exception with the interpretation that Prospect Farm should be open to the general public. I believe that it was left to the town of Jackson for Jackson residents. And I think that we should be careful with what we ask for, because we've seen what happened at the Falls by having the general public in, and it wasn't pleasant. So to take this property, Prospect Farm, and open it up to the general public, I think is going to be opening up a can of worms. Thank you.
Ken Gimlin, I'm speaking from the Conservation Commission. I know that Dick and I have discussed this before, but when we put the stewardship plan together, we went back and took a look at the intent of the will, as well as the vote that came from the town when it accepted this property. And her will is, well, there's a couple of facts here that gave us the interpretation that we have. And it's also the interpretation that the town has applied up to this point in time. So this is not a change in course. And let me just go through that a little bit.
You know what, I'm going to ask you to
Yep.
use
Yeah.
the microphone, please. Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. When the Conservation Commission put this together, the first thing that we did is we went back and took a look of the will that donated this land to the town. And then we also took a look at the town vote, which was in the 1930s when the town accepted this as a recreation land. And when Mrs. Baker gave this land, and you can go back and read her will, all of the verbiage from the will is actually in the document itself. It says that she gives it to the town to be part of the forest reserve. And at that time, the forest reserve is when the White Mountain National Forest was being put together. So we also looked, and at no time that we could find Mrs. Baker ever prevented anybody else, because she was an out-of-towner that owned that property, and upon the death of her and her son, it was to be willed over to the town, which the town voted to accept as recreation lands. So our interpretation of her intent was that this would be part of the forest reserve, be managed the same way. I would also point out that the town historically has done joint memorandums, including where the summer parking lot is, for the hiking trails is actually on the town of Jackson's property in Prospect Farm. So historically, the town has been treating this as though it is open more than just to the residents of Jackson. I'd also want to point out that on the comment relative to Jackson Falls, when that property was donated over to the town, it reserved the rights from when the Wentworths gave that property to the town, that they would also have all rights, which included all of their out-of-town guests and so on. So our interpretation is Prospect Farm was never given just to the town solely for town folks. That's our interpretation. Others could interpret it differently if they so like.
One more, Peter.
Yeah, with all due respect, Ken, I mean, the first sentence of the deed in the transference is for the enjoyment of the residents of the town of Jackson. Rather than my interpretation or your interpretation, I suggest that we get a legal interpretation to get a sense of what was really the intent there. I kind of agree with Dick that, you know, it's crazy time up there and up at Prospect Farm these days. Living on that road, I can speak to the amount of traffic, but in my interpretation of the will, it does the first sentence is the guiding sentence, and the first sentence does say for the enjoyment of the residents of the town of Jackson. So my suggestion is, at some point, the town get together and get an independent legal interpretation of what was the intent of the donation to Prospect Farm. I'm not against the management plan at all, but I mean, I think we need to really think about who's the town land for? Is it for the townspeople or is it for the general public?
All right, one more. Somebody that hasn't spoken would like to speak one more comment or?
Yeah, Mike's asked. So I would just like to ask if.
Microphone, please.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Sorry, Ian?
Yes.
So I would just like to ask, if we decide that it's only for the townspeople, how are we gonna manage that? Are we gonna have the police up there and, you know, questioning everybody? They gotta show their town pass or whatever? I just don't see how it's actually almost relevant. You know, we're a generous community, and I think we want to share our resources. So that would be just my comment.
I know there was one more hand, and I'm going to take Larry, and then I'm going to call for a vote.
Yeah, Larry Garland. I haven't actually read the article, Peter, but when you say the first sentence says for the enjoyment of the residents, does it say solely for the residents?
No.
Or could it be the residents as well as?
You should be directing your questions to the.
Yeah,
can I read the deed? That might be helpful.
Yeah, I didn't know if it said solely for the residents.
Go ahead and read it. Go ahead, we'll let that happen. It's not a long one.
Only 8 pages.
Article 7, it says, I give my property to the town of Jackson in the state of New Hampshire, known as Camp Wildcat, together with all the lands belonging thereto, some 500 acres. It's actually about 450. More or less to my son, Ezra R. Baker, for life, and from and after the decease of Ezra R. Baker, I give said Camp Wildcat and said land in Jackson, New Hampshire, to the inhabitants of the town of Jackson. So they give it to the town. to be forever held and used by it for a public park as part of the forest preserve. As part of the forest preserve. The forest preserve becomes the White Mountain National Forest, which owns the abutting land. That's where our interpretation comes from.
Thank you. All right. One quick one, Ted.
If it was part of the forest reserve, it would have gone to the Forest Service. It went to the people of Jackson. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor of passing this article as written, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I declare the article passed. Article 15, and I remind you, we can't raise money, we can't spend money yet. Article 15, to act upon any other business which may legally come before this meeting. Anybody have any questions, comments in general? I got one right here first. I saw his hand between you. Oh, Peter, okay, this one, yeah. This one.
Tonight is, what's your name? Willis Kelly. Willis Kelly's final. Tonight is Willis Kelly's final night as the moderator of the town of Jackson. And he has been our public servant for many years. He could quote you his resume, which he is so proud of and should be, because he's been on many, many committees, stood up before the town and defended us and defended himself. 54 years, he just told me. We'll go over the rest later. So we want to thank you sincerely from the bottom of all of our hearts for all that you've done for us over the years. We know we'll still see you around. And we're giving you an honorary gavel. So, you know, is going to be in the Jackson Historical Society. Yes. Thank you very much, Willis.
Well, I wasn't expecting
Don't
this.
anyone say speech.
And before you all disappear, I have to get a dissolved motion. So please, but with that, I wasn't expecting it. I guess it's been an honor and privilege to serve in many different capacities, and as long as Chief Henry, I still do the fire department, and yeah, it's with various things in my teenagehood. It's April 1st will mark 54 years of something in town service, and it's been an honor and a pleasure. And I thank all the people here, and all the people that have passed, and all the people that have gone to bless us in that big community field in the sky. It's really been an honor, and I want to thank you, and I don't want to have tears here, so I'll shut up. And with that, I will ask for a motion to dissolve this meeting. Do I have a second? This meeting is dissolved. Thank you.